On this episode, I talk to a veteran of what I like to call impromptu sports. You know, where you pick someone that's doing the same thing as you and now they're your mortal enemy. His name is Manuel, and his impromptu sport of choice is running. And if he isn't running, well, he's probably making dope art, like my dope art on the podcast. That's him. But that's not even the dopest art he makes. It's the fact that he uses it as one of his major teaching tools in education. Not everyone that can see can read, and some of my favorite teachers were ones just like him. We also talk about that if he's going to be your running coach, oh, don't you dare look back, just keep your eyes off me. I said you're holding back, now shut up and run for me. This long trail is our destiny. I said, ooh, shut up and run for me. Let's jump in. Hey, everybody. Welcome to a Moderately Good podcast. And, you know, the whole rigmarole that we always do. We're going to give a shout out to my guy, Above Average Joe Media. That's where you can find him on Instagram. He does all my cool videos and pictures and stuff like that. Wish Pocket, my guy, Jason. He's the one that fine tunes all this audio and makes my voice sound so good. But he could also do that for your band or, I don't know, your PowerPoint presentation. Maybe you want to blow them away, like bring in speakers and stuff, you know. My guy Jaron, he is at No Names Originals, and he is an artist extraordinaire. He does like custom bleach clothing. He does paintings. He sells art. Support small art, right? Support small art.
Small art.
Yeah. Small art matters.
Dope art matters.
Dope art matters.
Make sure it's dope art.
Yeah, dope art matters.
Dope
Get it?
art
Yeah,
matters.
but and Jaron does very dope art, by the way. My guy Mo, he has the Go Bubble app. He was on the podcast before, and that Go Bubble app is a detailing service like to your home. So they come and they clean your car. The guy Jason that was up above, he got one of his car detailed and raved about it. And if you use the promo code Go Moderately, you get a certain percentage off of that. I would hope that everybody that's watching would subscribe, but you don't know how blessed I feel to have all the subscribers I have so far, and tell your friends, and it just helps me out so much. So if y'all guys can do subscribe here on YouTube, you can subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcast, it just helps me do what I'm doing. It's just like a little click of a button. So, this guy, we were reminiscing, before we started, just like kind of how much we actually hung out in the early parts of our life. We haven't actually hung out a lot in the second part of our life.
Yeah.
And life just kind of does that sometimes.
For sure.
So everybody say hi to my good friend Manuel. Manuel, say hi.
Hey, what's up? What's up, everybody?
And Manuel is a podcast veteran. He let me know that he has done many podcasts, but he also said he's never done a podcast like this.
I mean, you have beer, man. I mean, I've not done
You don't have beer in your other podcasts?
I mean, I have whiskey, and that's usually because I'm drinking it and at my own house, but nobody has brought me beer and given me alcohol.
And tacos.
And tacos, which was awesome. Like, usually I'm providing that myself,
right?
And, to get through the podcast. But this is great, man.
Well, that's kind of what we do around here. It's a little like, like a little, today it's lunch and like beverages.
Maybe I should have did shots. I might have been.
I mean, we can take a break in a little bit.
We'll take a break, maybe take a shot. That'd be great.
Wait. I got this like really fancy fireball.
It's IN fireball.
Anyways, so Manuel, really quickly. So what Manuel? One, how I know Manuel is we grew up in the same town, and how me and Manuel really, I mean, to be honest, kind of like reconnected.
Mm-hmm.
To get here was he does all the cool artwork for the podcast. So all the little like heads you see, all my logo. I mean, Manuel's done all my artwork, all the T-shirts, like all the logos on the T-shirts. I mean, I don't know if you know how much your artwork is like out on my my site.
I love it, man. It's kind of cool. Like I didn't realize until, after I delivered it to you. And
Yeah.
now I see it everywhere. I mean, it's, it's on bracelets, it's on stickers, man. It's kind of cool. It's kind of cool to see your stuff out there. So thanks, man. That's really cool.
Well, I mean, thank you for doing it. I mean, I appreciate it. So really quickly, tell these people kind of what you do and like where they can find you. Sure. And like all like, like your Etsy stuff, like the whole social shebang. We're just gonna go ahead and get it out of the way.
Yeah, man. So I mean, you can follow me on social media. Definitely Manuel Herrera 33. My name, Manuel, has an E in it, not an A. I get that all the time. But Manuel Herrera 33. Probably Instagram is probably the one place I'm on the most because it's visual and I draw. And so definitely go there, or you can just go to manueldraws.com. And that's where I have, lists of things that I do. I have a link to my Etsy shop. I have stuff for sale, links to my social media, a couple of videos of me just kind of talking about the things I talk about just to get a kind of an idea of that. And yeah, I don't know. Like, that's kind of where you can find me. You won't talk about what I do or?
Well, so now you were a teacher.
I was a teacher.
For how long?
I taught in the classroom for 7 years. So I was, funny enough, driving up here when I got your address. The middle school I started teaching at is right down the road. Like you were in that footprint for that school, which is cool because I used to coach cross country when I was teaching. So like I ran your neighborhood all the time with kids. Yeah. So yeah, I taught for 7 years, and then after that,
I'm surprised you were even on time. I'm surprised you didn't. This guy loves to run.
I do, man.
You probably just carrying shoes in his car right now. He's like, I wonder what it was like to run this neighborhood again. Anyways,
it crossed my mind because we passed one of those parks. I'm like, it'd be kind of cool to run where the kids ran. We used to run behind. Anyways, another story. But yeah, so I did that for 7 years, and then I thought I wanted to be a principal, and did that for a year, and said, this is terrible. I don't like this. I like being liked by people. So I just did that for a year. And then I kind of moved around in education. Technology was just starting. So like getting anything like technology, whether it was a laptop or interactive whiteboard, I was kind of at the beginning of that. So I started doing training on that. So I started doing professional development, working with teachers and using technology, a variety of technology, and kind of just worked my way through positions doing that. And I just finished my 19th year overall in education in June. So
wow.
Yeah, it's been a cool little journey to get to do that. For me, teaching was fantastic. I loved it. It was great working with kids, but then getting into technology, ed tech, that was just fun. That was just like playing. Like a school, hey, we bought an interactive whiteboard, learn to use it, teach the teachers. Or hey, we now have iPads, learn to use it, teach the teachers. And so like that's what I did for a while, and it was awesome. But the past 4 or 5 years have been a little different in what I did. It was more around instructional coaching and curriculum assessment. So it got a little boring, I have to say. But yeah, I mean, I loved it. It was a great 19 years. It's fantastic. It's really cool to kind of come back and see Deer Park Middle School.
I mean, that was always my plan.
What's that?
I
live here, buy a house here.
Live and buy a house here, and then like develop a podcast, and then have you come back and you have your own neighborhood, and then have you reminisce, and then talk about it.
Not only did he give me beer, but he let me have this like one moment. Yeah, I like it. Thanks, man. That's pretty good.
No, so okay. So I have a couple of questions. Let's just let's go to this one first.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Are you tech savvy, like outside of work? Like, do you like devices and things? Did you play video games as a kid? All that kind of stuff does that make sense?
Yeah, no, yeah. So I think as a kid, definitely. I mean, we grew up in the 80s, 90s,
right.
Having, an Atari to Nintendo, and then how to figure out how to connect that, right? So we bought that. Our parents bought that for us. Actually, I bought my first Nintendo at a Dillard's here in Victoria. Dillard's used to have an electronics department. $109. I still remember. Saved up my money from a birthday party. Bought a Nintendo. But all that to say,
at Dillard's?
It was at Dillard's. Dillard's used to have in Victoria. Dillard's had an electronics department. And
I feel like that's some small town stuff right there.
That's some small town stuff right there, dude. So yeah, I bought this device, and then I had to figure out how to connect it to television. My parents were not tech savvy, and we had those like old big console TVs that weren't, you didn't have all the things you needed.
Right.
So learning, like tinkering with that stuff. So I mean, in that sense, yeah, tinkering, playing, I like to do that. When it came to like technology, my uncle that lived next door was the first computer he had the first computer I ever kind of worked with or played on. But even that was like, okay, I don't even understand how this works.
Right.
Like, what is internet kind of thing.
Right. I remember that.
And so, but as I got into education, I started to play around a little more because we use it every day. We had desktops. So I would tinker and play. Now, I don't know how to run a network. I don't know how to like do any of that stuff. I just know how to plug stuff in and see if it works, turn it on and off, and that's about it. But I loved it, man. It's fun. It's exciting. But video games were definitely something I did, through my teenage years and into college a little bit.
Well, I was just kind of, because I was curious because like I was thinking about like around our age, in my opinion, it's kind of that best age to be to bridge technology between young and old, right? Because of where we grew up and how technology kind of boomed around us in particular at our age. Does that make sense? Because then you carried that on into like, you're doing that through education. Like, so
Sure.
like I feel like you had to have an interest in it to want to pursue that, or you had to kind of push. I mean, you're pushing new territory. Is that correct?
For sure. I mean, there was times where I was in districts that had new, innovative kind of stuff, relative to it being an education. But like that kind of thinking and a curiosity and wanting to learn how to do something, paid off when we bought a 3D printer. When it paid off when we bought a laser etcher. It paid off when we bought this huge poster printer. Like I was okay tinkering with stuff and not being scared of it and making it work and seeing what else it could do. Yeah, I mean that stuff, that growing up in that time helped. And now I'm helping, helping some of the teachers was like helping my parents.
Yeah.
But funny enough, because usually when I talk about this with different people, they're like, oh yeah, it's all the old teachers. No, man, there's some young teachers, like even in their 20s, that are like, I don't know how to use this.
Now, are those people that like, they don't like kind of do social media? They don't like, is it like that across the board, or is it just like that type of tech? Not like they understand TikTok, but they just can't get this stuff.
I think it's just there's hardware involved with some of that. So it's not like I can muddle through an app and get an app to work. But if there's like some kind of hardware involved where,
Isn't that crazy?
It is. I mean, it's interesting. It's interesting to see that
because everything's on your phones. All you gotta do is plug it in.
For sure.
It's very simple,
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
And if you think of anything externally out of that, it becomes hardware that you have to know how to manage.
And it's also like, I think how I'm going to use it. So and this is always kind of goes into when I train teachers. So first, teachers people know how to use social media. People know how to use their apps. People know how to use their phone because they use that in their kind of personal workflow,
Right.
Whatever it might be. But now I've got to use that as a way in a workflow with kids and children and colleagues, and they're not familiar with using it like that. And then if you involve some like hardware and, cords and stuff, whether it's a document camera and stuff, it just becomes like overwhelming to them. So it's interesting to see, yeah, you can be tech savvy in a sense because you can be tech savvy in a sense, but at the same time, you can also be like, I'm scared as hell of this. Like, I don't even know how it works. I don't even want to mess with it. And you have people that just like young. It's not just like old teachers. There's old teachers who are amazing with it. And so,
really quickly,
go ahead.
Those old teachers, their overall attitude, what is their overall attitude like as an older teacher? Like, do they have the same similar, like open mind, positive attitude towards their teaching and stuff like that? Do you notice a trend in that or anything?
I wish, no, I'm gonna say I wish. It's people, man.
It's just the individual and who they are.
It's individual and who they are. It is not a old, young kind of thing. It is just who you are. You could be, I used to work with someone that would help redesign learning spaces, right? And we were kind of, I was just there to assist. They were the kind of the expert in it, but we would work with really teachers who were on the verge of retiring, and we would show them what room design meant and how you could redesign a space with technology, without technology, whatever it might be. And they just lit up, and they were like older teachers, and they were excited. And one guy even stayed an extra year just because he was excited about how he redesigned his room, how it was going to work the next year, how he was going to use technology, use kind of analog tools. So it's just people, man. It's just how, who you are as to whether or not you're going to be accepting of things changing. Also being in education, sometimes you just got to, I wouldn't say you have to accept, you just have to like know shit's going to change every year. Like something's going to be different. Like you're going to use a new grading book. You're going to use
that's just life.
I know that's the thing, man. It's just life. And there's just people who are like, cool, let's do it, man. Bring it on. There's people who are like, fuck this. I don't like it. Like, well, when am I retiring? Like, let's get out of here. So it's people. I mean, I don't think it's a demographic. I don't think it's a group of people. I don't know. That's how I see it, because I can't assume. I can't assume that, oh, that's an older teacher, this is going to go terribly wrong.
You know what I think it is? I think that, and this is probably somebody smarter than me probably said this in a different way, but like when you're a baby, the whole world is open up to you. Every possible direction you can look into, right? And then the fight starts to not have that narrowed down to like a pinhole of what you're willing to take in or accept or learn or whatever, right? And some people, like theirs goes a lot slower, and some people goes a lot faster. You know what I mean?
That's a good way of putting it, man.
And you really have to work hard to like keep it open, keep your open mind, because naturally, as a human, just who we are, we want, because I guess maybe our mind's becoming simpler, we want things to become simpler along with it.
Sure.
So there's not much confusion.
Sure.
I would say,
For sure. I think there are definitely groups of people who that does, close faster, and you have your way and your method of doing things, and there's people who just don't want to disrupt it. Totally fine. Cool.
You're real close with your mom, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And how old is she?
She's 74.
Okay. We don't have to necessarily talk about this. I mean, look, it would be dishonest to say that you haven't seen a change in your mom since like you were a high schooler.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah. We have these arguments all the time. All the time.
So do you feel like her hole is closing at a pretty decent rate, or do you feel like it's closing too fast, or like not? How do you feel about how she's?
It's good. I mean, I was just with her, and I just but day before yesterday.
Oh, by the way, so you used to live here in Texas. We grew up here in Texas, but you do not live here anymore.
I do not live here anymore. I live in St. Louis now.
Okay, so live in St. Louis, and you were back to visit, to come down to do my podcast, which is fantastic, right? You went back to our hometown.
Yep.
Saw some of our old friends from high school.
Yeah.
Saw your mom. Ate some tacos, right? And that kind of Texas stuff.
For sure.
You showed your girlfriend how hot it is outside.
I tried to warn them.
Did they have any? Did they even have any idea?
No, they have. I mean, they kind of, in their minds, it's going to be hot, but they didn't realize like every place we went to was going to be hot. It was from a restaurant to we're in an Airbnb downtown. The air condition is set to 68 and it still says 77. I'm like, are you serious? Like, we're inside. It's, so, nothing prepared them really. I tried to, and even, I didn't prepare myself, and I knew what it was going to be like.
Anyway, so you're back.
So I'm back. Yeah.
Yeah. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So I'm back, seeing my mom and friends. And
so your mom, and so you're seeing her, like you FaceTimed her, talked to her. Right. But you haven't, when's the last time you saw her?
Prior to this week?
Yeah.
Maybe, did she, no, she didn't come for Christmas. Probably last summer.
Okay.
So it's been almost a year. Almost a year.
Okay. So how's that going?
It's good, man. My mom's getting older, so
does she trust you?
She does, absolutely. She trusts me. I think she trusts me for sure.
That's important, right?
It is, and I'm getting her to trust me even more. So she tells me more, especially now she's getting older and health becomes, concerns. And so for example, my mom is very much, she doesn't. Since I was a kid. And I'm going to totally blame my mom right now and my dad. So since I was a kid, my parents always like to hide things from you. Like you're too little, you don't need to know. It's very much I think
they're trying to protect you. And that,
for sure.
And that generation is really good about doing that.
For sure. They're great. So great that my parents would, as a kid, speak in Spanish to each other. Most parents will spell stuff, right? Like, hey, we're going to go to the BAR and have a DRINK.
Okay, but hang on really quickly. So you did not speak Spanish as a kid?
So I didn't speak Spanish, and still to this day, I don't speak Spanish, which I'm sure that will stun some listeners as it always.
It's okay not to speak Spanish and be Hispanic.
I wish it was okay, man. Try being Mexican and walking in a place and like, I don't speak Spanish. You would think I would have
just start telling people you're Italian.
I know, right? I should change my name somehow. But yeah, so they would talk in Spanish, and so I wouldn't know what they were saying. And the only way I learned Spanish was through my great aunt, and she would speak in Spanish only, and so I was kind of forced to learn.
Oh, sorry.
So what I was saying was that, her keeping things from me has always been something she's done to protect me, kind of thing. And so she's gotten older, and she started to fall. I think that happens as parents. People get older, falling becomes a thing, which can lead to really bad things. But she fell one day, and at my house. She was in St. Louis and came and she fell, and we got her. She was okay, and we talked in a little more. She's like, oh, Mijo, it's okay. She's like, I fell the other day, and I'm like, you fell the other day, and back home. And I said, Mom, like, does this happen all the time? She's like, oh yeah, I fall all the time. And I'm like, Mom, you got to tell me these things. Like, I need to know that you're like something's happening. She's like, I know. So now she's telling me things about her health, and she's letting me know. And so I don't know if it's a trust thing or it's just I would like to think it's a trust thing. And also it's she's understanding that, she needs some help when it comes to that. So,
also Manuel's mom, when you listen, like this is the right thing to do. Yes. He's giving great advice. So
I love her. She loves me. It's good. But I'm glad, she's opening up a little more.
Look, that's why you had us.
Yeah, exactly.
Is to do this. This is what we're here for.
That's what I try to tell her.
Hey, some parents don't get to have their kids. Like, they just like, see you later. You know what I mean?
Sorry.
Hey, we care.
We do. That's why I try to tell her. I try to tell her.
We do this because we care. And that we should tell it. They should tell us that, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we do this because we care.
Right.
We care now.
So yeah, I mean, that was, that's where I am with her. But you were asking if she's, her cold, her interest and curiosity, or no. You were asking about,
I like to think of it. It's like the James Bond, like it's like it goes down.
It's like the eye that closes and opens. Yeah. That's a barrel of a gun. I didn't realize that's what that was. I think,
it is.
I think that's what it is. I think.
Oh, you know how many years old I was when I found out that was a barrel of a gun?
I thought that's what it was. I thought it was a barrel of a gun.
We're gonna have to fact check that
right,
later. Yeah.
We need a guy.
Go ahead.
Anyway,
so your mom's James Bond hole is what?
My mom's James Bond hole closed a long time ago. I think at some point she's like, this is it. I'm done. The rest of my life is going to be the way it is and how it is. And that's great. And I think she's definitely, as I've had children, I've got 2 boys, 13 and 10. She's, kind of opened that back up a little bit, getting to know them and learn them.
Grandkids is good for that.
Yeah. Cause they have different interests. They have different interests from me and different interests from her. And, that's, she's okay with them having interests, and she will take interest in what they do. It'll be great to get my mom into anime. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see. So, yeah, my youngest likes anime, but some anime. He hates when I give him a complete label of liking it entirely. But
I didn't even know there. I thought that's all there was. I didn't know there was more than.
Well, I mean, he likes this one particular. I guess show or movie or character.
I'll trust you.
Yeah. So, and if I say anime in general, he's like, I don't like it all. I'm like, okay, cool. So, anyways,
yeah, Dad.
Yeah, Dad. God. I'm so not cool. I think this will help. This helps. Stuff like this helps, because then they'll see it and they're like, oh, wow, Dad's legit. Like, you had some people.
I mean, we haven't even told stories yet.
I know, right?
No, I'm just joking.
They can't watch this until they're 20.
So let's like reverse it, and let's go back to the year you were a principal.
So I
really quickly though.
Go ahead.
So these are my 2 questions.
Okay.
My first question is, I want to know what you loved about that year, and then I want to know basically what made you not want to do it, like kind of more descriptive of what made you not want to do it anymore, and how that was either healthy for you or what you needed to do for all the things that you loved about doing it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, I'm gonna go back and fix those words. I interned as an assistant principal as part of my program. So I wasn't a principal, just for educators out there. I was an assistant principal, interned.
Hey, educators, don't don't add us you looked it up or something.
Know, right?
Who cares?
Wait a second. So I did.
Look, he said that before. I misunderstood it. So it's not. You don't have to get on him. You were in that system to see what.
Yeah. No.
You knew enough that you didn't want to do it.
I did. I was there. So I was at Deer Park right here down the road. Did an internship as an assistant principal, and I will say I'm going to start off what I didn't like about it.
No, you got to start off what you liked about it. I want to hear that first.
Two bads and a good? 2 goods and a bad? Anyways.
Okay,
what I liked about it was, I don't know, you're in a leadership role. The idea of being in a leadership role was kind of cool.
Was it rewarding?
No.
Oh.
No, it wasn't rewarding. I mean, just to be honest, it wasn't rewarding. I didn't find anything rewarding about it at all. Not that it's a bad thing. I just knew that wasn't who I was. That wasn't something I wanted to do.
It wasn't healthy for you.
It wasn't healthy for me. I did it because I was encouraged by my principal at the time, who saw that in me, said you'd be great at this. And I was like, cool. And so I went back, got my master's. Part of my program was to be to intern for a year, and I did it. And I felt good because I'm on a leadership team. I'm not necessarily making decisions, but I kind of get a peek behind the curtain a little bit. But then I was like, I don't like making decisions or even being a part of this. I don't want to be a part of this. So it was not really fulfilling. Like the good part about it is I realized I didn't want to do it. And, sometimes it's just kind of maybe a natural progression for some, because sometimes you just want to make more money in education because, you don't get paid a whole lot. So I didn't like it. And another piece why I didn't like it is, as an assistant principal or as an intern as assistant principal, you deal with all the discipline. And so it wasn't the kids that I really would be frustrated with. It would be the teachers that I would be frustrated with. I'm really sorry if you were there and you're listening, but I would get the referrals. I'd get a stack of referrals. I'd go sit in the office and I'm calling down, Scott Gassner, come down. All right. So Scott says right here, chewing gum and refuse to spit it out. I'm like, really? Am I spending, 15 minutes with Scott now? Talking about why he wouldn't spit gum out. Like, is that what that teacher chose at that moment? That was the sword they were going to die on to write a discipline referral. So I was getting stuff like that. It was just stuff that I know as a teacher I wouldn't sweat that small stuff.
Okay, so I'm going to go out on a limb and say, as a teacher, that's the kind of stuff that you took care of in your classroom.
I would, yes, but
I mean, I think that is a very important thing to say. That's just like, hey, the principal is not like just like this. Anything that happens, it's just
right.
like there has to be a level of you controlling your class. It is your classroom. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is, and I think for me it was I had ways of building relationships with kids, and if that and it's just knowing that sending a kid down the office for gum is not going to help building that relationship. It's just not. It might be a conversation I have with them as a teacher, like, hey, we don't chew gum. Well, honestly, I didn't care, but something like that would be something that would be similar to that. We would have conversation about it. Like, why are we doing that? And then it's after the class or before class, aside. I wouldn't stop the class and have that conversation, but they're kids, man. Middle school is what, 11, 12, 13-year-old kids. They're children. They're still kids. They're gonna fuck up. They're gonna forget rules, especially when you go to different classrooms and there's different rules in every classroom. You got to help them through that. You don't in my opinion, I wasn't there to discourage them. I wasn't there to be like, I'm in charge and you're not. I was there to listen and have conversation and talk about whether it's a good or a bad decision or whether it's a good or bad, something that's going to distract them in class or whatever. That's how I saw school. Middle school, I mean, I don't know, man. It's a place where kids are still trying to figure themselves out. They're still trying to understand who they are, and that doesn't help that. That doesn't help that. And gum is the metaphor for any little small offense that would happen. So I struggled with that. So I would get those referrals, and I'm like, no, I'm not going to help. Now I'm like, I'm disagreeing with the teacher. Well, so I got to be supportive of the teacher.
Let's just stop in that moment, okay? So the teacher sends this child to the principal for an offense like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, I would go on a limb and say she's expecting punishment or something.
For sure.
Okay. And you're looking at like this is not really necessarily it is a punishable offense, but in the scale of punishable offenses,
yeah.
like this is like, I don't know, a speeding ticket or something.
Sure.
But and so how am I supposed to maneuver that for you with the expectation of that you want something done? When you put that in my hands as the principal, you gave me that power as a principal to make that decision when you could just take care of it. If you wanted to discipline that in a way in your classroom that fits the crime, then you could just do that in your classroom.
That's really kind of how it should be.
Right.
So sometimes it was.
And by the way, my parents were both teachers.
Yeah,
but I'm going to tell you, my mom didn't put up in her classroom at all.
Yeah.
And if I were to show her this video, I mean, she know exactly what I'm talking about. She didn't put up with anything.
And some of the kids who were getting sent down, this wasn't, a first offense for that child. Like the kid that would come down for the gum, it was probably a student that was constantly, quote unquote disruptive or causing problems in the classroom all year long. And so, sometimes you just get to the end of your rope and you're just like, I'm going to send him down. I don't need him in the class. So sometimes they would just send the referral. The kid didn't always come down then. I had to call them down and 3 classes later. It's a tough thing, man. It's not easy. There's a balance for it all. It's hard. I didn't like.
You're wrangling cats.
You are wrangling cats.
So
man,
mean, you're going to lose a couple are going to slip out. Couple are going to come back. Couple are going to scratch you. I mean, it's just like it's kind of like, but you have to at least like. I mean, it's I mean, that's what you're there to try. Like you're there to try to make a difference, right?
So for sure. So I knew like for me, that wasn't the role I needed to play. I didn't need to either A, disagree with the teacher, B, hand down a punishment I didn't agree with. Or I just didn't need to be in that role. That wasn't how I was going to help kids. I didn't think that just wasn't going to fit my strengths.
Well,
I wasn't willing to learn to make that work.
If we fast forward to right now, you don't get to where you are now with staying there.
What do you mean?
Like if you had tried to force that principal role, you wouldn't be where you are right now.
I'd probably be.
You wouldn't love the job that you have. You wouldn't do all the things you do. You wouldn't be doing art for my podcast if you're still principal.
I would have probably tried to force it and then been miserable and probably done a bad job.
Yeah. So so you just kind of go like, "Ooh, I'm cut bait."
Yeah.
Was that a hard decision for you to?
It was easy. I knew.
No, I mean, but is that something like for you, like over your entire life, are those kind of decisions been easier, or like have you had like? Because that seems like someone kind of sets up to do something and then you have to realize really quickly that you don't want to do it. And some people stick that out.
Sure.
But some people cut bait really quick. And I was just asking, is that something you've always done with decisions in your life?
No, I think that was kind of a learning thing. I think, that happened to be, that happened to be a time where I'm just like, I'm going to cut, I'm done, I'm out.
Yeah.
And there's been times where like, I'm going to stick this out a little longer and see where this goes. Has it gotten easier? I think I've just learned to recognize sooner. Okay, this isn't for me. This isn't what I wanted to do. Which kind of leads me to I went to college and I thought I wanted to go in hospitality. We waited tables,
right.
And we can talk about that too. But Scott and I waited tables. I started when I was 18. I did it until after I graduated, and even after I graduated. And I thought I wanted to go into hospitality management. I ended up working at Barton Creek Golf Resort, several restaurants, and like, I want to do this. And I did it and I held on to that. And then at some point it's like, okay, maybe not. Like in that I hung on to a little longer than, I don't know, I wouldn't say, well, maybe than I should have. But we all end up in the same, place for a reason kind of thing. But that was something I probably stayed on a little too long. I probably could have left that sooner and gone a different direction.
But that's the point where you got into teaching, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I was doing that and I was miserable. I even rented cars with a friend of mine, Ashley. We became friends because we rented cars together. And that was kind of in between. And then our good friends from high school, Clark and Kim Motley, kind of were starting to get an education. They had gotten an education. Went to college with them. All of us went to college, including Scott there at Texas State. And they got an education. And they, knew I was kind of like trying to figure shit out. And they said, hey man, you should look into education. Because there was a point in time where when I started at Texas or Southwest at the time, I wanted to coach. I wanted to be a track and cross country coach because I ran track and cross country. And so I started trying to go in that direction. I changed it and then went into hospitality or management. And they said, hey, we're going back to education. We love it. You should look into it. We think you'd be great. We've been doing it for, I think they had been doing it maybe 2 years. And they said, no, you should do this. We think you'd be a great fit in teaching. And so I said, okay, cool. So I went back and got my certification in Texas at the time. They had alternative certification. You could go through one of the regional professional development centers, Region 13 here in Austin. Went back 2 years, had my year and a half. I had my teaching certificate and started teaching.
Did you ever want to teach?
I don't know that I wanted to teach. I just knew when I first started college, I wanted to coach. So I thought I could just go coach. I could be the guy who coaches track and cross country and teaches you history,
right?
And that's not even teaching. Sorry.
Oh, easy, easy.
Sorry.
Oh, well, poor track teachers teaching history as well.
In my
a very specific group he's calling out there.
In my experience, when the coach gives you the answer.
But in his defense, he just said he was going to do it. So you must have some respect for him.
Yeah. So I got into teaching, and as soon as I did it, man, I was like, hell yeah, this is what I want to do.
All right. So really quickly, did you? Because we were in the same school. We went to the same. And no one will know who these people are, but just out of curiosity for me, was there any teachers that we had that kind of inspired you? Or did you, I don't know if you had thought about teaching up to that point, But like, I was just wondering if there was anybody that was like at our school that you modeled maybe what you did, or someone that inspired you to be the teacher that you wanted to be.
No, I think
Was it the anti?
It was the anti. It was, I don't like any of the teachers. But
you like Miss Haynes, right?
I did like Miss Haynes, man.
Okay.
I liked Miss Haynes.
Hey, shout out to Miss Haynes.
Hey, what's up, Miss Haynes? I think I started following her on Facebook.
Yeah.
Yeah. Miss Haynes. So I only took one art class from Miss Haynes.
Really?
I took one art class. That was it. Nothing against Miss Haynes. It's funny. We were just at my house in Edna, and there was my mom keeps her Bible on it. Now it's a stand, some kind of stand, little small table, and I painted it in Miss Haynes's class. And my girlfriend and my kids were like, "You painted that?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And they didn't believe me. And I was like, "See, this is the confidence my family has in me. I can't even be like, an accomplished illustrator, and they don't, they can't." Anyways, so no, like I just didn't like the teachers I had. I just didn't like them. I didn't think the ones I had anyways. I was also like very anti-school. This is all anti-school. I was just very much, this is dumb. I don't like it.
Well, I mean,
I was not a good student, but I
think you're an artist.
Yeah.
And a lot of people that are art heavy brain don't really conform super well. Like that's just kind of how those people kind of work. You know what I mean? And like some people form better than others.
Sure.
And some people just really don't do very well in that kind of constructive kind of stuff, I
think that's what it was. I think it was like, I have this like inside me creativity, creative human that I wanted to be. And I couldn't do that in any class. And it's surprisingly enough, like I said, I only took art 1 year. And
you couldn't really do that in our hometown.
You couldn't do that in our hometown for sure. You know what and we'll keep going, but the best class I did take in Edna was an ag class with Mr. Schomburg. Did you ever Mr. Schomburg?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Fantastic class. I learned to wire light switches. I learned to run a bead to weld. We got our boating license, field dress a deer. Like it was just an interesting.
Why do you think Mr. Schomburg was such a great teacher?
He was I don't know. He was a caricature of himself.
Do you know what I think it is?
What?
Yes, he was a character kind of himself, but he was very authentic. Mm-hmm. That's exactly who he was. It's exactly who he was. He was this kind of character.
He was
very, would this be a good description of what's the guy on Seinfeld? Not Jerry, but Kramer. Like he's very kind of, he was just kind of intense when he talked and stuff like that. I feel like he had kind of like hair, maybe a little bit like that. Did he or no?
No, I think he was clean cut, combed. It was just that's who he was.
Yeah,
he was who he was. He was very much a character, but he owned it. And I don't know. He was just honest and genuine, and he never got mad at anybody. And if he got mad at you, he would, it was a lesson to be learned. I remember he used to say, not everybody's got a little common sense. That's just not common. And we, some kid would just do something stupid, and he would
especially in a shop class,
especially in a shop class. So I don't know. So I think that's why I didn't like school. It just didn't fit who I was. There was nothing there in Edna, as you know, like that was really around being just different, being, different. I think I kind of.
We grew up in Stranger Things, bro.
We did.
We grew up in the 80s in school.
For sure.
So you learned what you learned.
You did.
You know what I mean?
You did. It was weird growing up being that, as a kid.
We didn't have computers really.
No, we didn't have computers I didn't have computers until like my junior or senior year. And while Miss Rackley, she taught geometry. I forgot who the teacher was. She was teaching us Windows 95. I was learning how to draw and paint in Microsoft Paint. And my younger cousin, I actually drew something, printed it out, and I gave it to my younger cousin who still has it.
Oh my God.
And he gave it back to me, or he gave me a picture of it. So it's really cool. It's like this picture I drew in Microsoft Paint.
You have to send it to me for sure.
I have to send it to you, man. It's cool. And it was just like, this is me. This is who I was. This is what I enjoyed. And here I am having to like do what is available to me in Edna and kind of the mindsets of Edna. And it was very much, like art is not going to be, you can't make any money doing art. Like nobody knew anybody who was, at least in my family or circle of friends, like who was an artist or did anything with art that made money.
I wanted to be a stand-up comedian. Do you think? Do you think anybody knew any stand-up comedians in our hometown or anybody that did that? And like, how am I going to sell that to my parents?
Yeah, I know. That was the thing. It's I was going to be one of the first cousins to go to college, and then like didn't want to fuck it up, you know, like I didn't want to, you know, my parents might've been like, my mom more so, my mom was very like education, education, education. But it was just to go and get, there was no direction. I didn't really have a direction to go in. So, yeah, I don't even know where we started with this.
So we started with you did not model your teacher game.
Did not
after
model
Jordan or anybody. Like you basically you were like, I'm gonna be the new guy on the block. Like you came with your own fresh ideas
For sure.
on like how to do this.
For sure.
And I'm gonna say probably not only did you maybe learn that, but process and it helped you with your kids, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
With your kids that you taught and the kids taught and being a principal and your own kids.
Yeah, I think a lot of that. I think being around kids in general, like helped me definitely with my own children. But even being a teacher was met with resistance of like how I wanted to do things. Because it was different. It wasn't like, I didn't want kids sitting and getting and just listening. I wanted kids to be doing and making noise. And I started to use drawing with kids, not really knowing that I was using drawing, just other than this is how I think. This is the way I make sense of information. And I got shunned for that. Teachers were like, you can't teach kids that way. They have to learn how to do Roman numeral notes. They have to learn how to do Cornell notes. They have to learn how to, you know, every which way we learned to take notes or to process information. That's how you should be teaching. I'm like, but it doesn't make sense to me that way. Like if I do it this way, where I draw a picture out, that makes sense to me. And so I started using it with my kids and they're like, yeah, this makes sense to me. And I love this. This is a fun, an interesting story. Kind of. So when I started teaching, or a few years into teaching, the kids took this Bill of Rights test in 8th grade. And it was just this like 50 multiple choice, fill in the blank question about the Constitution and like the government. And so with my kids, I taught special ed, my first couple of years. My kids had to take that test. 8th graders, typical kids, they qualified for a variety of reasons. And so they had a hard time just, watching a PowerPoint or taking notes. And so what I would do, especially when we got to the government, is I would draw pictures of the 3 branches of government. I would draw the White House for the executive branch, the Supreme Court for the judicial, and the White House for the executive, or I may have got all that backwards. Anyways. And then I would basically create this graphic organizer drawing, and I would walk the kids through it, and they had to learn all the things about it. But there was a lot of this very picture oriented. And the teacher who taught history didn't like that. So what are you doing? What are you doing? Like, you don't know. They need to learn how. So I was like, oh, whatever. And so I would take these kids and I'd still do it. And I loved it, man. So we would go take this test, and my kids would all take their test and flip their test over and redraw that whole picture because we had been drawing it over and over again.
Is that legal?
That's totally legal. It's totally legal. And so they would have this like graphic organizer that they drew, that we all drew and were a part of. And they would take the test and do well. And all the other kids were like, what the fuck is that? Like, why didn't we get that? Why can't we draw these pictures and understand the test? And it was like, hell yeah. Like this makes sense. And again, didn't really know that was going to be a thing.
By the way,
15, 20 years later.
Like it is, some of the best ideas are the simplest ideas, right? And like that, it's just a real simple idea.
It is.
Right? 2 quick things.
Sure.
1, audiobooks have changed my life.
Yeah.
It's really hard for me to read, to sit down and read, just for whatever reason it
Same
is.
Here.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. But audiobooks, I am reading books like a madman, right? And if I had some kind of audiobook in school to like learn stuff in school, I might have been more engaged or inclined to do that, right? But the other thing is, as a kid, I loved Legos. And I loved like putting things together by looking at pictures.
Yeah.
Because that's the way I understood stuff. To read it again was difficult. It was a lot easier with pictures. And so it seems like only that you would be doing your kids a disservice if you're not trying to find the individual way that they learn. But you have to ask them. You can't tell them. You have to be inquisitive to them. And I feel like that's what you're saying you were doing, right?
Yeah, I was kind of listening to what made sense to them. And, as I started to teach, years into it, you do different methods of teaching, and you try different things, and you see what clicks, and you look at kids and you ask them. And if it works, great, we'll do it next year, or we'll do it the next time we do a lesson, or you'd listen to them, and sometimes kids don't know what they know. They don't know what they need until you present it to them. And so I was always somebody who presented information in a variety of ways.
You don't know what your option, you
don't
gotta know what your options are.
Yeah. It's hard.
And some, hey, oh, by the way, sometimes when you give even a child, if their options are endless, that's too much.
Mhm.
They just give them 2.
Constraints are good, man. Constraints are
But
really great.
I don't even look at it as a constraint. I just go like if someone, I don't know, if someone put me on a car lot with 1,000 cars and goes, pick one. You know what I mean? I'm standing in the middle, like, and I just got to pick one. How far out am I going to check every car?
Right.
You know, so it's kind of like one of those things, like, you know, like sometimes for your kids, it's just good to just give them a couple of choices.
For sure.
And if they don't like those, go, well, A, these are all that we have. Or B, I mean, choose one. You know what I mean? I'm giving you a choice.
Yeah, for
Anyways.
sure. And so as you taught, I mean, that just comes with, you know, teaching. You just learn different ways to present things, different way to, you know, help kids understand information. But I loved it. It was always changing, always doing something different. And then you know, what other piece with teaching that I didn't learn until later was like networking with teachers outside of your building, which sounds almost common sense now. But just network with people out of your building, because if you don't, you end up just being like in this bubble of the same people that think the same way. And it's great to, like, when I moved to St. Louis is really when I learned to like network with people, because I didn't fucking know anybody, you know? And so when I did that,
right?
but yeah, it kind of had to. And it was great because then I was like, holy shit, these people are doing this and they're doing that. And they're like, I didn't even think to do that. Using Lego to teach metaphor. I mean, it was just crazy. And so I'm glad that I, you know, as much as I hated to leave Austin, you know, I was kind of glad I left and kind of forced me out of a comfort zone. And, you know, I learned a lot. I don't think I would be where I was, what I do now, if it wasn't for moving to St. Louis. I think that helped a ton. It's really weird to think that now, as much as like, you know, went kicking and screaming. But yeah, I mean, no, it's good. You just get older and you learn new shit, and I don't know. That's all I got.
Hey everybody, Little Scotty here. If you like the podcast, be sure to hit the subscribe button if you're on YouTube, and follow if you're on Spotify. And go to AMGP store to get cool shorts like this one. I'd really like a bigger part on the podcast. I mean, I want a bigger part. This is bull.
So usually how like I try to like wrap this thing up is we just kind of like talk about like, you know, how you kind of balance your life, grade your life. Like, what do you do to like take care of you so you can be good for everybody? So, so you know what? I did want to ask you about this. I mean, you have been running since high school. Like, I mean, I don't think I've ever known you not running.
Yeah.
Okay. So, when do you think you started running? How old were you when you, like, I wouldn't say competitively, but like you just kind of got into running?
Middle school, man. It's so funny. So I was in middle school, and a buddy of mine, Patrick Gonzalez, shout out to Patrick, who's actually has come to St. Louis a couple different times and we've hung out. But Patrick was a lineman in our football team in middle school.
I remember Patrick Gonzalez.
Yeah. So, you know, he had two buddies, Joe Davila and a cousin of mine, Renee Zarati. They were all friends. Sorry, Patrick. Patrick failed a grade, and so Patrick was in our grade.
Right.
But he knew these two older guys, and they all ran cross country, and it was just fun for them. Like, they just had a good time. So Patrick said, hey, you should run cross country. It's fun. I got two buddies, Joe and Renee, and Renee's my cousin. You know, you should run. I was like, sure, whatever. Like, you know, I'll do it. And so I knew my older cousin, Shelly, ran. You know, she was about 4 years older than me, and I knew she ran. And Betsy Westhoff, she ran, and I kind of knew them. So I'll give it a shot. And so I started running. That was terrible, dude. Terrible. Patrick would beat me all the time. I'd come in like dead last. I'd come in next to last. And I'm like, I don't want to do, like, what am I doing? You know, what is this? This is not fun for me. So, but I stuck with it. And Patrick kind of encouraged me to stay with it. And so I ran, it was my 7th grade year. And then I ran my 8th grade year, and I was kind of good. You know, I kind of got better for whatever reason. It wasn't like out of dedication or anything. I think it was just, I kind of understood it a little more.
You're consistent though too.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what it was. Like, so then I ran track in 7th grade, and I did distance. And so I think learning how that worked and then doing it in 8th grade and having some success, that's what kind of propelled me, I guess. And I say propelled me, like, you know, I was good. I was a good runner, and decent now, but that's where I started, was middle school. And I got into high school and loved it, man. I mean, you know, lettered as a freshman, right to regionals all 4 years in high school, never made it to state, but I was a decent mile runner, like a mile and 2 mile runner. And kept doing it. I moved to San Marcos in college and kept doing it there. And then I moved to Austin. That's a huge running community. Just kept doing it and doing races. And still do it now. But recently I started doing, I bought a bike. Well, not recently, 4 or 5 years ago, I bought a bike and started biking. And I always wanted to try it just to, see if I could do it and just change up kind of workout routine. That was it. Like I would just run. I would run fucking all day and started biking, loved it. And then I took a shot and started swimming and started doing.
Threw all three together.
I did. I started doing sprint triathlons and love it, man. It was just adding variety to like what I did. It wasn't just running. Running kind of got, as I got older, kind of got boring.
I mean, you've been doing it for a minute.
I did do it for a little while, man. So, so now I love swimming, man. I love swimming. I look forward to the summer. Because we have a 50-meter pool in the town I live in, or the city I live in. And it's great, man. I love swimming.
So how old are you now?
44.
Okay. So what is the advice of 44-year-old Manuel to 13-year-old Manuel about running? Like, give me some good, solid, like, hey, I've been running for a really long time. What are some tips around, like, how to take care of your body? What would you change about what you did? Like, is there any modification? Like, just some advice about being a long-term runner. I mean, in that fashion, you know what I mean?
Man, I don't know that I have good advice because I was always a runner. I was always a person as I got older, even ran, was just like, it was very much like just shut up and run. Like, don't complain, don't bitch that it's hard, it's hot, your chest hurts, your side hurts, you just run. Like,
does that do something for you, like psychologically?
It does. There's a lot of little things that do things for me psychologically as a kid running. Because I'm not the flair kind of guy in a sense. Like, I'm not going to go buy the best shoes. I'm not going to go buy the best,
You're a man's runner.
I'm just like, fucking just go do
You're
it.
a working man's runner.
This is why I like, I would watch that documentary on Prefontaine. He was very much like, he said, if you're going to beat me, you're going to bleed to do it. And it's very much like, dude, we're going to do this and we're going to fucking go hard. And it was just as competitive. Like, I want to beat you because I know maybe you have a better coach, or maybe you went to a nicer school, or maybe you're really into this more than I am, but I know I can be better than you. And I think that competitive side of running is what drove me. And then eventually I created rivalries with different guys in different schools that I would run against. And it was just like, I just want to fucking beat him. Like, it wasn't like, I'm going to go train harder than him. I'm just going to train like I always do. But then when I run that day, I'm going to run harder than that guy in some way. Like, there's a guy in Yoka, man. I still remember his name is Corey Villarreal. I had learned, like, he was waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning. Dude, that's it. We're getting into this. Yeah, he would wake up like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning and go do all these fucking runs and this and that. I'm like, I can beat him and I'm not going to run.
Like, how did you know all this? Like,
so I knew another guy that was like in his school.
Then this is pre-internet, right? So like,
this is pre-internet, man.
There's like rumors passing through towns.
We were folding notes and passing,
Hey, and Manuel's getting like stories like he's like in a meat locker punching fucking like steaks and shit. Like, it's like the story gets bigger like as it comes to Edna.
It was stuff like that really, like, I had that competitive side to me. Like, it only comes out like in running. Yeah, it comes out in running. And I think some of it was part of like growing up. I had the things that I had, and had a great childhood, but we also had those kids that, had the best equipment, the best whatever, and the best this and that, and couldn't play any of the sport for shit, but look great out there. It's kind of like when you go play golf and you see all the guys that you guys look great, and they don't play for shit. And I'm out there in running shorts and a t-shirt, and I'm like, cool, I'll beat you, kind of thing. There was part of that. So there was some kind of chip on my shoulder from that, knowing that I don't need everything and have everything, but I can still beat you at running. So again, I don't have any good advice other than just shut up and run. So when I coached, my kids were like, oh, it's so cold. I'm like, I don't fucking run. I don't care. Coach, like, I got a booger or something, just blow it out. Like, coach, go run. Like, it was just like, just shut up, run. Like, who cares?
Like Coach Knight. Like,
right? Like throwing a chair across. It was just that, like, for me, it was just go run. Like, who cares? Like, your side hurts. What are you going to do? Your foot hurts. I'm sorry. You can not run or you can run. And then it'll be a guilt trip. And, it wasn't like I was trying to hurt kids. But it was,
Well, I think that was your way you taught running. Mm-hmm. Like, you have a way you teach your classroom. That's the way you taught running. Mm-hmm. Like, everyone has a philosophy. Some people like blossom under that kind of pressure. Some people fold. Not every personal trainer is for everybody. I'm not for everybody. I've trained people and they've either quit me or I've let them go because I'm just not the right trainer for them. Right. So, like, I don't think you have to you know, like, I mean, it sounds brutal. I don't want to do it, but like, I think that, you know, I think that was just your philosophy. That's how you channeled your stuff, you know?
That was, I think it was something that was in me that I had that I didn't know I had until it happened. And I'm like, hell yeah, I can compete at that level or be,
You had a lot of control over that.
Yeah. So it was,
and
good.
It's something you can control.
For sure. Now,
right?
Like definitely, for sure now. And I mean, even as I get older, you know, I go do races and I still try to be competitive, even though
you just pick people out in the crowd and.
So well, sometimes there are people. So I was doing this one race series, man, in back in St. Louis, and it was called the Winter Parks series. I think it's Snowball series now. Anyways, you run like 5 races through different parks in St. Louis in December and January. It's fucking cold, snow on the ground, but you run. And there was this older dude that he and I, we'd place whatever in our group, but we would always finish close to each other. So he became my, like, that's the guy I want to beat every time. I don't want the first place guy. I want that guy.
Did you give him a name?
I didn't, but he had this mullet. I should have.
I feel like his name would be Johnny, just for some reason. Like,
well, we were doing that. We ran this one race, and he knew, like, we were going back and forth. And
do you think he knew your rivalry that you had with him?
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, okay.
Because, you know, I did this one race, and I finally caught up to him, and I said something to him. I can't remember, like, hey,
as you were running,
I was like, I'm running. I caught him. I was like, all right, let's go, man. And he looked at me,
shit.
And so we're going back and forth. And, you know, this is like, you know, like, I don't know, at the time I was maybe, you know, 40, maybe I was 35. Anyways, we were competing back and forth. And so I finally said, fuck it, I'm going to take off. I'm going to, like, just make him run harder. So I run and I get ahead of him and I'm like, fuck yeah. So I'm not looking back because I don't want him to know that I, you know, whole mental game. Anyways, so he comes up and he shoves me like, what? Oh shit. Sorry, man. He hits me. He shoulders me a little bit. And I was like, oh, let's do this. And so, I broke Scott's equipment. See how
you're good.
See how fired up I get.
You're good.
So yeah, he did that, and I was like, oh bitch, no. So like we run this race, and there's a last corner. It's a left-hand turn, and you know I turn it on and I cut that corner just enough to like edge him out. And I was like, it just, you know, it's like stuff like that excites me. It's like I know we're weekend runners, you know, kind of thing. But that makes it fun. For me, that makes it fun. It kind of brings back some of that, like, as a kid, be competitive, be exciting.
Well, I would go on a limb and say that you're a fairly, like, empathetic person,
mm-hmm.
right? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a good balance technique for people that are empathetic to kind of find something that, like, kind of challenges you. You have to, like, really kind of, like,
for sure,
work hard around. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, just and I personally, in that scenario, I don't think anybody's getting hurt.
Yeah, no.
I mean, this personal battle that you created in your mind is not hurting Johnny at all.
Exactly,
you know what I mean?
Exactly. Like, we might have thrown down in the parking lot later, but I'm just, yeah, it's not hurting, but it's excitement.
Did you just drop your, like, really shitty, like, low class shoes on his, like, the hood of his car and go, I beat you with those?
Bitch. Yeah, no, it's just one of those things that it's just, you know, it's fun. It's fun. It makes it fun. So after that, different races, we never talked to each other. I never spoke a word to this guy. But we would, you know, we knew that was there, and it was just fun. Like it made that, I ran that race so that I ran in the winter in St. Louis because it sucks. It's so cold. But that added an extra thing to it. So I would make sure I go out and get runs in and then do those races. But yeah, I mean, I don't have any good advice. I mean, honestly, I don't, all that to say, I don't have any good advice.
I think you've given some pretty solid advice, not giving, like, good advice. So, like, I'm assuming, like, you know, running something you do to, like, kind of chill, right? So, like, what's some other stuff? So obviously you draw, like, obviously you do art, right?
Go ahead.
So no, I was just gonna say, so, like, just you know, I don't know, minute, 30 seconds. Like, how is art, like, how does that help you, like just mentally balance yourself?
It's just therapeutic in that just for a while it was pencil paper. Like just something about a pencil on paper or a pen on paper, the tooth of the paper, that feeling that, you know, it's like whatever the opposite of ASMR is. Like, it's not a sound, it's a feeling that you get when you draw rather than like a sound you're hearing. That was therapeutic. It was just, I could draw the same stuff over and over again. And then I kind of got an iPad. It's just therapeutic.
The
and
iPad's very cool as well.
For sure. Yeah. Like, that really changed my art. I think it allowed me to do what I do now, creating digital art. But it's just therapeutic, and you're drawing lines. You're just sitting there. It's monotonous. It's just a way to, like, slow down. I can almost do the same things over and over again, but I'm, like, either processing something I'm working through, or I'm thinking through a problem, or I'm just, like, dad issues, being with dad, I mean, like my kids, like having kids, and like, did I handle that right? It just gives you that time to slow down. That's what it does.
Do you know what I like about I like the most about your art? So like if you follow Manuel on Instagram, he basically will draw, instead of posting pictures of something random in his day, you draw pictures of something random in your day. Like I remember when you had like a doorway and like your kid it was like a bubble and they were yelling behind the door, like dad, I need whatever or whatever. And I think that's just a really cool, beautiful, artistic take of the idea of like, oh, I'm posting just a picture on Instagram.
Yeah.
And now you're posting like a drawn picture on Instagram.
Yeah.
And that communication that you talked about, like, it's like it's like the Legos. It's like drawing out the map of, like the way government works. It's that same concept of like, hey, some people gravitate towards a simple line drawing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
My art's very simple. Whoa. my art, I think, is very simple. Like, and I like it. I like it that way. I mean, it's, I emulated a couple of artists that I really like and eventually found my style, but I like that it's very simple. It's very easy. I don't know. I think people in now looking at that and having conversations with different people about my art and the style I draw, and I think it makes it, I don't want to say accessible, but it makes it like, there's something that people are drawn to by its simplicity that I didn't realize. I was just the way I drew, but the simplicity draws people in, is what I've been told. That they're like, oh, I could draw that. I could kind of do that as well. And I think that attracts people, whether they're do it or not. But I think that it's not this very complex drawing that could be like, you have this overwhelming, like, wow, that's really great art. I could never achieve that. And you just kind of move on. Where if it's something simple, something about that draws you in and you pay attention to it more and you look at it more. And I know exactly the picture you're talking about. Like, something about that drew you in because it is so simple. I mean, and this, I have a hard time talking about my art because it feels very egotistical, but hearing other people talk about it, I kind of understand it now. And I think that's why I was drawn to those other 2 or 3 artists that I like, is because it is very simple and not complex, even though, yes, it takes me all day to do it, but something about draws you in, and there's something like calming in that. And it's, I don't know, digestible. And people, if they wanted to, could replicate something similar. And I use that. That also carries over into teaching people how to draw, that style or that version or that way. Because when I teach people how to draw, There's
a lot of different art forms.
There is. I mean, yeah, for sure. But I teach people how to draw to like simplify complex things. And I kind of use that as like, this is how I draw, and I don't use anything super complex. So you can draw too, but we're going to draw and show you how to use it to explain ideas and explain thinking. And yeah, man.
Well, let me give you what I think is a really tremendous compliment. People that do impressions. Okay. Some people's impressions of whoever are just really simple. It's like a look of their face. It's the way they carry their voice or whatever. Some people's impressions, when a comedian or somebody like that does an impression of somebody, sometimes it's very complex, and everybody has their own impression, right? Mm-hmm. And what people have to do when they're doing a very simple impression of somebody, it has to be something that just really, it's like just nails it.
Yeah.
Right. And you're doing that in your art. It's a very simple impression of what you saw, mm-hmm. and you're nailing the highlights. And I'll tell you why I know that. So, if anybody noticed, like the whole first season of my podcast, Manuel, doing all my art, he drew a caricature of everyone that came on the podcast, right? Mm-hmm. And not one person that I talked to, they all were like, "Oh, that's me. That's me." And like my Rin, she has like kind of longer hair, and then she has like a little like rat tail thing, and she goes, "He got my little tail. He got my hair." And I was like, "Yeah." And like, it is those subtle details that made, because it's kind of like drawing like a cartoon. There's similar features to each person.
Sure.
But you caught the things that make that individual, that person, the very simplest parts of those things. And they're so cool. And then we put all the rap names at the bottom, and then I made a t-shirt. And
That's cool to hear, man, because she was one that I was like worried about doing, because her hair, she's got like this flowing hair, and I'm like, shit, how am I going to capture this? How am I going to do this? So yeah, like I kind of try to get little elements of her, but yeah, I'm like, my people definitely, like, you line them up, they kind of all look the same in a sense, but trying to capture everybody's.
And no offense, Matt. But Matt, you look like Brad Paisley, but you're also like an all-American boy. And I know you listen all the time. So
that's right.
That's why I'm giving you a shout out. And so, but you even nailed Matt. Like, you just kind of nailed his kind of like look. And he's just, there's nothing like, Matt has a regular haircut, regular facial hair.
Mm-hmm.
I love you, Matt. But but like the fact that like you caught his like just kind of the features of his eyes and just the way, that's the hard ones.
Yeah.
When someone has something that really stands out, it's really easy, right?
Easy to grab that.
But like when you capture somebody, and even mine that like, I've shown before, it's just like, I don't know. I feel like I'm a pretty regular looking person. And so, but you kind of caught these details of my face and my eyes. So it's great, man.
So this is a funny story, and I'm glad that I can share it now. So we were in college. So Scott and I we went to Texas State together in high school, and so worked at Johnny Carino's, and I was asking Scott, and I don't even remember this. I was asking Scott about what he did, like what was your major? What was your major? What are you working on, or what, because I was trying to find direction or whatever, and I knew you were really like an artistic, creative person, so I was curious what you were doing, because I think I could do whatever Scott does. Like I wanted like something about that. And you're like, I'm doing like graphic design. You were a communications major. I don't know if that's what you ended up with, but you were doing like graphic design. I'm like, well, what does that mean? How does that work? And you were like, I remember you taking this table tent at Johnny Carino's, and you're like, see this table tent? See how all this is lined up and all this is designed? And I was like, he's like, that's what I do. Like, that's what I'm learning how to do, is like layouts and, spacing and, everything. I was like, that sounds really cool. And I said, I think I can do that. Like, that sounds like something I'm interested in. You're like, dude, don't ever do it. Don't ever do it. You're gonna freelance your whole life. You'll never make a job. You'll never make any money. And you're not gonna do it. I was like, holy shit. I was like, all right. So I just didn't do it. Like, I didn't do it.
God, what? I like crushed this guy. Like, so let me tell you the story about how you crushed my dreams.
No, but it was I loved it because like I respected your opinion. I respected the work you did, and I knew kind of like how creative you were, and I knew like you'd taken art class with Miss Haynes, and I'd seen some of the stuff you've done. So I was like, oh, you know what, I trust him, and like maybe that's not the way I go. Here we are. 20 years later, 30 years, 25 years later,
we're both doing art.
And Scott's like, hey man, you want to do some art for me? I'm like, what? Like, I was like, yeah. So it was like a cool, like full circle for me, from somebody who I like kind of admired and like knew, like did art well, and was like into that and did graphic design, and told me not to do it. But here I am doing like illustrating your logo, illustrating stuff for you. Like, that was huge for me. That would like, because I constantly, I know you probably experienced it as well. It's like imposter syndrome is like a huge thing. Like not believing in what you can do and what you can create. You're always like competing with yourself, and so like that was always a huge thing for me. So when you asked me to do that, I was like, fuck yeah. So like that's like another cool check. Like that helps me like dig out of that hole of imposter syndrome. And I have a lot of them along the way, and I definitely trust what I do, but that was another kind of like really cool thing for me, was to have you ask me to do that. Like that was really cool. Like just knowing your background and you being a creative person and being asked to do that. I've repeated myself now twice, but awesome. It was awesome. Like it was really cool.
I'm just glad that, you believed enough that you were like, okay, I'll do it. Like, you could have been like, well, what is this or why? Or
for sure.
You could have been like, oh, I'm kind of busy or whatever. And you took the time to do it. And so, it makes it that much more special to me that it's you. It's one of my friends inside of my circle.
Sure.
Which like, we never even really like kind of talked about how tight we kind of were in high school and college.
Yeah.
But then just, shift and time changes. You get married, things happen. And it's, and to have like the internet bring us back around and art bring us back around, you know what I mean? It's really cool.
It's a cool thing, man. It for sure is. And, I did it because I had confidence in myself, but I also knew like you doing this, I have all confidence in you doing this. Like, I know this is going to be, and it is a pretty cool, like, idea and podcast, and it's going to continue to grow. So like, yeah, for sure. If I can lend a hand to do that and, help you out and provide my, what I do. It's cool. Like,
Well, I mean, that's kind of like our rent paid as our service here on earth, right? So it's kind of like I try to help you out as much as I possibly can, whatever. And you do the same for me.
For sure,
you know
man.
what I mean? And so, even with like the whirlwind stuff you going on, like you still try to find time to get me all my stuff that I need. So I really appreciate
absolutely,
it.
man.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, we run, we do art. Is there anything else like you do, like that you like use to like kind of relax and wind down?
No, those are probably the two things. And I like to play golf by myself.
No, but I think no. I look, Tom. Tom, I love you. Like Tom's my mentor, and like he's my workout partner, and I love working out with Tom. But I do really like working out by myself.
Yeah,
it's kind of my time.
It is. Like I played golf the other day. So when I lived here in Austin, one of my things was to, on my birthday, play a free round of golf, because most of the courses here you get a free round on your birthday. So I would play. On my birthday, that would be like my
wait, did you go multiple courses on your birthday?
No. Like I would, sometimes, because it would be good for a whole week. The week of your birthday, you could, like, for the 7 days.
Okay, so can I do that?
Yeah, anybody could do that. Like, there were several courses. Like I would.
Hey, you want to come to my birthday party next year?
Let's do it, man.
Hey, we're just going to go to multiple courses.
I want you to play the hole ahead of me. We'll play golf by ourselves. But there was golf courses I did then, and there's golf courses that I don't know if they still do it. They would do all inclusive, where you pay like $50. And that gets you like, a breakfast taco in the morning and a burger at lunch, and you play as many rounds as you want.
What?
Yeah. St. Louis doesn't have that. They don't have anything like, I don't know if Austin still does that.
But I would do that. Dude, I don't even play golf, and I would do that.
Dude, it would be great. Like, you just ride around. So I like to play golf by myself. It's just therapeutic. It's just great. I can hit 3 balls off the tee and nobody cares. I can hit the shitty shot twice and nobody cares. Like, it's just fun to go out there and fuck around.
You are competing against yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't need a crowd. I mean, there's no.
You don't. And if I'm down here, I love to play with Adrian. Adrian was like, we played golf all the time when I lived down here. But there's times where I like to go play by myself, and I do it now, and it's just nice to be out. And like, my favorite course is in St. Louis in Forest Park, and then Forest Park is like the big city park. My favorite course. Like, it's 5 minutes from the house, and I go play there as often as I can. But yeah, I mean, I'd probably do those 3 things: run, play golf, and draw are probably the 3 things I love. And then I'll go to museums and look at art. I love going to a contemporary art museum because it's always a revolving exhibition, which is always cool. I like to see, like,
well, you have to go out in the world to get inspired, right?
For sure. One of the questions you had for me, just kind of like, prep for this was, what do you, I don't know. It was about like who you are and what do people think about you, or how do you feel yourself, an individual, or something like that. And I like to look at everything in a different way. It's just, I can find inspiration in anything. So whether it's going to the art museum, obviously things are creative and beautiful. But if I go to that, I'm not going to look at always the art. I might look at the fixture that's hanging the art. I might look at that, your lights, and in some way, like, how could I use that? Like, what this flag of Jordan's here, like, how could what if I put different tacos, drew a picture and made a flag out of tacos, or the way your boxes are lined up, how would I use that? How could I, knowing that it exists in somebody's house and not just your house, and it exists in somebody else's house, create a piece of art that's similar to that, but might speak to somebody who collects something different. Like, I look, I see things differently because I want to, like, there's more uses to that thing than just what it does. And I think I've always done that as a kid, when I took stuff apart, because if I could take it apart and put it back together, I knew how it worked, but maybe I can make it work in a different way.
Did you do that visually? Did you visually remember did you memorize what it looked like and then put it back?
No, yeah. I mean, I had to, if I took something apart, whether it was a remote control car or a broken controller, I'm like, I'm going to take it apart. Just, we grew up at a time where the internet didn't exist, and it wasn't a lot for us to entertain us. I would just take it apart and just try to put it back together. And it really had to be from memory. And I think that has stuck with me. And so I think that's driven a lot of things that I do.
What makes sense about how, like, you like to teach?
What do you mean?
Like, you like to draw, to teach, like, you like the visuals.
Yeah, for sure.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, for sure. I think that explains probably why I teach that way visually, because I think when I'm teaching, sometimes I'm still teaching myself content, even though I'm teaching kids. Like, I'm trying to teach content to kids, but also maybe trying to relearn content in a different way. And so by teaching it visually, I'm still teaching the kids, but at the same time, like, oh, you know what? Next time I'm going to do it this way, because now I see it a little different this time. So yeah, I mean,
Well,
it's
you know, on some level, every kid can see.
Mhm.
Not every kid can read
Mhm.
effectively.
Mhm.
So, I mean, you got a little bit broader stroke with visuals sometimes.
for sure.
Especially, you know, I don't know a lot about the teaching system, but I would assume like, you know, kids are struggling with reading. It's not necessarily reading and writing is not something it can be a problem. So, is there a way to kind of like bridge it to get to it, but like have that kid not fall behind? I guess maybe, you know.
Well, yeah, especially, living in Texas, teaching, we had a huge population of students that were bilingual or, well, not bilingual. They were Spanish speaking here in St. Louis. And so visuals are kind of like the great equalizer. Like everybody can kind of understand. Living in St. Louis in the school district I'm in right now, we have a huge Eastern European Bosnian population, first generation. So they're still learning English. They're still learning the language. So I think using those visuals at times, so that ESL population is huge. And you can still use that as a teaching tool for, well, not just teaching, just a communicative tool. And I think kids probably appreciate that. Using that as a way to connect and understand and learn and teach and communicate. I think that's huge. That's a big, and it's being empathetic towards kids. Like you're like, hey, I want to help you. I want to teach you. And I'll bring you in, and I'm going to do what I can to help bridge that gap rather than just talk louder and slower. That's like what we want to do sometimes when we have somebody who doesn't understand the language. We think that that's the way to do it. It's still just English, but slower. They still don't understand it.
One of my favorite authors, he said that when you yell at your kids, you're just teaching them to yell.
Mm-hmm.
And you can go ahead and just apply that to just about anything. Like,
For sure.
The behavior that you show is the behavior that is mimicked, especially by your children, but
Sure.
By others. Like the way, how do you think a negotiator works? You think he just goes in there raising hell?
Yeah.
I don't think that's what Samuel L. Jackson did. You know what I mean? So, well, man, time flew today.
For sure. Like,
so
we can do the 2-hour podcast.
Did you have a good time?
I did, man. This was fun. Like, this is not normally what I talk about.
Right.
So this is cool.
So this is you're a podcast version to this type of podcast.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Like,
this is very
we didn't
different.
talk a lot of art.
We didn't, which is cool. Like,
Yeah.
we don't talk. I usually
we kind of did talk a lot of art, but
bit.
like not the way you probably usually talk about art.
Yeah,
you probably just talk about it in a more technical sense.
I was telling Scott earlier, when I talk about art, it's kind of some of the same questions, and I have answers for those. And this was cool. This kind of kept me thinking about.
Well, now you got new answers.
I do. I have. Well, I don't want to have new answers. I want to keep going on those. So,
but you might have a way to expand those questions and answers. You know what I mean?
I'll come back. I want to come back and do that. I'll be season 3. I don't know, season 4, whatever. Come back and expand on those answers. This has been fun, man. This has been really cool.
Nice, man. Okay, so I make everybody kind of give me a hug. Push that mic. You can push that mic forward.
I'm like sweating.
Oh, good. Good, dude.
Man.
Yeah. Love you, bro.
This has been great.
Yeah. Thanks.